I'm doing all right. Love and peace, happiness and togetherness. Sounds like a good motto to me. I love
it. Yo, welcome back to Look Plus. What's up, Kev? What a show.
I see the mohawk, right? T has the little mohawk working, the mini mohawk, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I tried to do a real mohawk with like long ass hair once with Vaseline and baby powder.
How'd it go?
Try to get it to stand up straight. Did not work. It took me like a week to get that stuff out of my hair.
Hey,
How
you
you
doing,
doing,
man? You're
I'm
one of our faves, true.
I'm loving the show. It was a pretty good one. Pretty good.
Yeah, a little heavy on the repeats though. What did I count? 10 repeats, tour repeats, and we'll talk more about that as we get into it, because I think in some cases it really worked for them, and I think in other cases not so much, but we'll see. We'll get into it. First though, and I usually we do housekeeping at set break, but this was such a fun and great interview. I want to give you and T some props. If you haven't gone and looked at the Matt Bush interview from last night, SE, thank you. We really appreciate it. But you got to go back and check out that Matt Bush interview. 2 hours of just cram packed with all sorts of interesting tidbits. Really, you guys stepped it up and did an outstanding interview. So
90% of what I wanted to do. There was one thing I didn't ask beforehand. I was going to ask him a question. Would blank have worked instead of Mayer in Dead and Company, and filled it in with a guitarist?
So why don't you do that, and then we'll do it for members only. They can,
okay.
It'll be an exclusive clip. Yeah, we could talk about Mike's clothes. It's like a giant banana fluorescent looking thing.
Reminded me of Devo. You get him the little energy hat, the red hat.
That's all he was missing. I feel like even with Mike's antics, sometimes he just comes across as not having a good time anymore. You know what I mean? Like he's like always the one that's like just feels like he's out of it. So I can't imagine what it'd be like if he wore plain clothes, right? At least there's that, like, he's enjoying being a rock star.
Maybe that's how he does it. He has resting Mike face,
Right. He's actually secretly like the most enthused about the tour, but he just can't show it on his face.
I want to smile.
I'm having a good time. This is my groove, and I'm glad we are sharing in it. All right, you want to talk about this first set?
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
Yeah, it was a fun set. We had some interesting things going on here. Nice little party time to kick things off.
Yep.
Yep, serviceable.
Yeah, well, no, it was good. It was I liked it as an opener for this, because I guess I was expecting them to do the obvious and do the sense to open.
Right.
Maybe even pick up where they left off, like Dead and Company did that one night. They stopped playing and picked it right up mid jam to open the next set.
Saving sense for the end of the set is great because it checked both boxes. Like, yes, PHiSH is predictable, but they also subvert expectations just slightly, right? Like, they're not completely unpredictable. You know what they're going to do in the night, but they still mix it up a little bit. I think that was a pro move. And in general, party time, I feel like is a really fun way to start a show, because it has like the instrumental part, like Cars, Trucks, Buses and Birdie Live, but it also gets the crowd involved.
Right. It's one way to learn English.
And then we had another traditional opener with Bag.
But nothing on it. I mean, you blinked, you would have missed it.
I felt that way about the first set a lot, actually. There was a lot of short, quick in and out songs. But yeah, again, it was I actually did miss most of it, I feel like. I think I don't know. It wasn't a lot there.
Well, I think I got a little bit spoiled at the Man last year with it. When they did the extended, they gave us an extra 3, maybe 4 minutes with it. It ended up being 8 or 9 minutes. And I was like, that's all right, we're getting there with it. I mean, it has so much potential, just like a Soul Planet. It's just a simple groove. Why not lean into it as the classic? Let's do a 20-minute song instead of, hey, let's do 20 minutes of my new one.
Yeah. Well, so I agree, Jen and Essie, that the set really started with the stash, but you can't completely skip these because what they're doing this tour, at least what I think they're doing, I'm kind of projecting this on it, is starting with these safe bite size songs, then they're really locking in with, and I think it's actually paying off. Well, tonight it took a bit longer than one. I think 3 of them was fine, and then you're into it. This was what, 4 or 5 before they really felt locked in.
I got a whole different theory about it.
What's your theory?
We're on the 40th anniversary, right? Some people get to see 2 shows, 3 shows, maybe that's it. Trey wants to pack in as many hits, few rarities, something you've never heard before, and make sure everybody has something that they walk home with, and they're like, that was my show. That was special.
You, sir, have been watching too much Dead and Company, I feel. That is the Matt Bush approach. I don't know that is the Trey Anastasio approach. It might be. I mean, there might be something to that because I think what reinforces that idea are all the repeats that we've gotten, right? There's no need to play two bouncing around the rooms in one tour that close back to back.
And we're 8 shows. We got 2 of them.
Right, because, okay, you're going to repeat 46 Days or Sigma Oasis or even Ruby Waves. Those are jam vehicles. It's fine. You want to pull them out, take them out again, going in a different direction. But the bouncing around the room, there was absolutely no need for that, except for what you're saying about trying to get it to more people. So I think there's something to that.
Right. A lot of older folks like myself come to just a couple shows. You remember back in 93 in a theater, them doing bouncing, some idiot bouncing around the whole theater. And you're like, oh, that's a great tune. I love that. And a lot of people never heard it because, like you said, maybe twice a tour before this. It's going to show up another 2, maybe 3 times, I bet.
So there is a bit of stat padding too to it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, that's enough.
Let's the 46 days. All right, Jam. I mean, we've come to expect a lot more from it, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they started. Yes, Jason, exactly. I was looking for the sample, but it's on the other show. I think 46 Days was the first starting to stretch out of the night, but aside from some nicely placed bass bombs and a little bit of a cool jam, really didn't do much for me. The Birds. All right, we're gonna get a lot of the critiquing out. The Birds of a Feather. I don't know what it is. It's like a microsecond different, like a split, but it was just slightly sloppy. Like it wasn't completely off, but they weren't in sync. You've heard versions of this where it sounds like one person playing. Right. Where it literally sounds like someone hitting a drum, like and tonight it was like, like there was a little mush to it.
A little disturbance in the matrix.
Look at us, amateurs. Critiquing this band,
and there was no jam to it, which kind of let me down because I look forward to this one. I know sometimes it's kind of blown off as questionable, but there have been some fantastic ones, and I always feel like when they started, the potential is there, as opposed to when you start bouncing, 4 minutes later, you have 4 minutes to get to the bathroom and back to your spot.
Right. Yep. But I agree. So now this is where. Well, I'm skipping bounce because we already touched on it, but stash is where the set really and the show for that matter really starts to go somewhere and make you feel like you got your ticket worth. Very solid version. Some Bird of a Feather teases in there, which was cool because we didn't get it in the original, so it was nice to get a little more in there. How do you think this one compared to Huntsville?
I like this one better.
Yeah.
I felt like it had a little more meat on the bone. I felt like it was the second time. They had already been through it once. They knew it. They had the muscle memory back intact. Boom, they went at it, so it allowed them to explore a little more.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. It's cool. I don't know if it's cool or weird. It's something that both times it came out of bouncing. That's just so weird to me that they have 2 songs back to back that are repeats.
If you look back at old Setlist from 91, 92, 93, you get a lot of bouncing stashes together. They were like kind of like Runaway Jim and Foam were at one time. They went hand in hand,
Yeah, it just hasn't been that way in
And
quite some time.
maybe that's a nostalgia thing too. Because the other night I was like,
I don't
Runaway
even know if you're
Phone.
telling the truth though. You might just be spouting out some boomer shit, and I'm like, oh yeah, you got gray hair. You know what you're talking about. Sure.
No, Runaway Phone was even
No, I know about that. I'm talking about
yeah.
the bouncing stashes. Sounds right. I don't know. We'll have to go
Yeah,
back and look.
but like I said, maybe that's a little nod to it. Who knows? I honestly don't believe Trey goes back and says, "Oh, remember we always used to do Runaway Jim and Foam together. We should do that." But maybe somebody says something to him, and then he's like, "Oh, cool, let's do that."
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it might have more to do with either the placements in a set and how the two songs, play off of each other, and or the keys. I mean, a lot of times when you get these inadvertent pairings, it's more so based on the key signatures and how things go into each other. Um, you know what my favorite part about this stash was though was the return to the top. That like turning back to the head of it was just really, really spot on.
I tell you what, I feel like tonight, I was going to say this later, but I feel like tonight Trey really was giving the band a few extra bars. When he decided to go back, he he let it go a little bit and let them catch up instead of being like, all right, let's go. You know,
They did, and jumping ahead for that, it kind of pissed me off in the cities because he did it with Fuego, and the transition was so good. I was hoping that it was going to just be a jam buried into it rather than the transition. Like I almost wanted it to just be like a sandwich or a tease rather than a full-on transition. But I digress. Let's bring it back to the first set. What are your thoughts on Leaves? Where do you stand on this?
you know, I'm not a fan of the Trey I want to be meaningful songs. I wasn't a fan of it back in 1.0 and I'm still it doesn't do it for me on really any level. I could throw on an Air Supply record and get the same thing from it.
I'm glad you said that because I was hoping we disagree vehemently on something tonight, and I think it's this. I really love this song, and it's grown on me. I liked it all the way back in 17 when it first debuted, and it was right after the Bowie Halloween, and it had that stylings in it, and I feel like it was one of the first songs. Maybe I don't know when Broccoli got involved, but it was one of the first songs in that like renaissance of Trey's voice, because in like 16 and earlier he was not really hitting it, but tonight I thought it was well placed, and I just really like it. I think it's a beautiful song, and I'm okay with it.
It does what it's supposed to do. You put it in the set and people either sway with their love or they go grab a beer. So let's get into
You leave me speechless.
Maze.
Yes.
I would like Maze every third night because every time they play Maze, it's going to get better. It's going to get tighter. And tonight's went places the other one did not go at all.
Yeah. No, I think this is the first one. And in my count, there's 3. But this is the first of 3 that significantly improved because of the repeats, where there was a noticeable benefit from having it repeated. The one thing though, and I don't know if it was my mix, like the way I was listening to it, is like Page was playing great. I could tell he was playing great, but the mix seemed a little off to me. He was just really back in the mix for the whole first half of it, and
He was
throwing
back
me
in
off.
the mix in Wilmington too, there and on the stream.
Oh, both in house and
yeah. When I was there, it was very trio sounding, for lack of a better
and
term.
some songs you don't necessarily need Page up front, but Maze is one of those songs that's pretty much all Page. I mean, without him, it loses its cojones.
Right. He has to whip his organ out.
Right, and just smack the shit out of it. And I mean, I could tell, like I could hear it, and he was playing very tight and accurate, but it just didn't have the oomph to it that you typically want out of it. Yeah, the je ne sais quoi.
So the je ne sais quoi. All right, so then we got the sense. Now the question we got was, is it 2 instances? If you went to both last night, the other night, Wednesday night, you went tonight, do you have 2 sense and subtle sounds in your stats?
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Right. We agree on that.
Right. Yes. Because, I will go back. I will throw up as my case for it. Rift in 97 at USA Arena. They played it for 30 seconds or something, stopped. That is one of the riffs I've seen.
Yeah. No, I agree. In Wilmington, did they get out of intro?
Yeah, I believe he sang.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I believe.
Because I would almost say if it was around the end of the intro, like I would almost give the asterisk that you got intro in Wilmington, then you got intro and full.
Here.
Because I typically, this is one, you know how we always talk about like why do you split up certain songs, like Letter to Jimmy Page out of Alumni Blues. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. I personally would notate if you have intro or not, because you don't always get intro, and I think that's actually an interesting.
But
thing
so that
to
would
read
be
on
an
a set
asterisk.
list.
If Sense and Subtle Sounds is there, it's complete intro and everything. If it has an asterisk, no intro, then.
Well, what is the track listing on it?
I don't know. I know that in Fishnet, it's listed. The intro is listed as a separate song.
Right, and the track listing has it as on Undermine too. Has it as a separate song?
Yeah, it opens right. It opens the album, just the intro.
So I think if it's two different tracks,
it goes back to the Tweezer reprise argument that they're two separate things on the album.
Right, because it says Sense intro is track 1, and then Sense is 11 is track 11. Like
right, he closes the album. So is it Sense reprise, like someone asked?
Well, no, because it's not listed as reprise on the track.
One's listed as intro, right?
Right, like this isn't up for interpretation. They feed you the answer. So with or without, sure. But I don't want to fuck with curtain. I like that. I like that on the curtain.
Right.
And
so,
my cheesesteaks.
So the MVP of the set was the Stash. It was I felt a solid set, but it didn't break any new ground.
Yeah. Solid, safe, enjoyable set. If you're one of those people that's just, padding stats and only get to see PHiSH once every few years and you wanted to get things, you got some nice things in there. But no, I agree. I think that's where we're at with that. So let me pull this off, do some housekeeping. We already mentioned the Matt Bush thing, but it's worth mentioning twice. Go and check that out. Also, let us know in the comments if you're watching this afterwards, what you thought about the show and about our takes. I'm really enjoying the engagement we're having in the comments on YouTube. So I want to encourage you to do that. And like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have more after shows coming up. We have something with Taper's Choice coming up. We have all sorts of things coming up. So it's really an exciting time for Wook content on the internet, if I do say so myself. You got anything else to plug, Kev?
No, we got the Taper's Choice thing. That's going to be Llama and T, so make sure you check that out. We got some other things we're looking at trying to do. Some fun people we want to try to get on.
It's going to be fun. All right, let's get into the second set.
Matt Bush is a must-watch, Timothy. I will say that I always joke it's the best we ever did after every show. But last night, I think that T and I and Matt just really bounced off each other really well.
It is certainly the best you guys have ever done. I myself have performed exceptionally well on several occasions, but for you guys, I could say confidently that it is the best you guys have ever done.
There we go.
No, you really did. You really did great. I jest, but you guys did great. Sigma was fantastic. I think
strongest. I think that even though the vintage on this second set is what Boone's Farm last year or something like that, I think it might have been one of the strongest sets they played, with Trey allowing the band to catch up, letting the transitions go. But we'll get into it. Let's do the Sigma first. What you got? I know that this is a big one for you. You always look for that jam.
I am a big fan of Sigma. Sigma to me is kind of like a Wave of Hope to you, right? Like there's just certain songs certain people are looking for. I think this is a great vehicle. Tonight's I felt was a little forced, to be honest. The jam, it was not like a really organic locking in early type of jam, but it did get there for me. It did eventually lock in. There was this really nice rhythmic section, if you go back and listen about halfway through the jam, where they pretty much just forgot all about melodic value in a jam, and it was like the cow funk cool rhythmic thing going on. And at 16 minutes I'll take it. I think it was a nice way to start the set.
Meaty, very meaty.
Yeah,
the jam, if you listen back, a little bit before they did go into the final Hurrah, you heard all of them kind of come to that realization at once, and Trey just grabbed it. But again, he allowed the band to catch up. It wasn't like he ripcorded into it. It sounds very natural and free flowing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the segue really benefited from that. Oh, nice, Slappy. Glad you were at the show. I bet you had a great time. Um, but and I think Into Final Hurrah was perfect, and it's exactly what I wanted. And I think that was also a great song choice for that second spot. It was something I wasn't expecting, hadn't heard in a while. It was fresh, it was super well executed. Um, but again, the cities, I keep jumping ahead and we'll get there. But that, on the other hand, that segue, not feeling it.
Okay.
Uh,
Well,
all
we'll
right.
get there and talk about it. Now, the Final Hurrah, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I would say this is probably one of the longer versions they ever did. They fleshed it out more than I can remember hearing.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very cool to see it jammed out. I don't think I've ever heard it fully jammed out. You've heard, you know what you get sometimes are the teases, face planting the rock brought back into other jams. So it like gives
But
like
that's
a
just Page normally.
right, but it gives it like a sense of the Final Hurrah becoming one of those thread
Right.
jams throughout the night. But really, it's just the sample. This one actually, I think, had some legs on its own.
Right. The intensity on Page's face when he was hitting the samples, just to make sure he hit it at the right time, I was cracking up. I was like, good for you, man. You were an artist. You pay attention to detail there.
He was focused.
He was focused. Now, the jam out of Final Hurrah into When Pillow Jets was probably a B, but it's also a debut.
Yeah.
And before tour, it was my call that it was going to be a big one out of the new ones. And a lot of
you
people
were saying it was going to be the New Year's.
the New Year's
gag.
thing. Yeah. So, and people have poo-pooed, but I tweeted about it and you said, yeah, let me listen to it. What do you got?
Well, I wanted to give it like a really good listen. And I mean, I try to give all of the songs a good listen, but like this one, I didn't look at anything else. I just had the headphones on and I like it. It is sonically a very interesting song. Probably, I would say, one of the most sonically interesting songs to have come out of the band in years, if not decades. Like going back to like the Undermine, Round Room type of sonically interesting things. I also think it is very well rehearsed. I think a lot of the times what happens with PHiSH is when they come out with these debuts, they don't really nail them. And even if the song has good structure or potential, they just don't hit it. I felt like what we got tonight was what they wanted to give, right? Like I don't think they left anything.
That's how you debut it.
Exactly.
Right. Can I address last year's Woti?
Yeah.
About the lyrics? I tell you what, I have a soft spot for songs about we're playing songs about music, which is what I got out of a lot of the lyrics. And the
wait, what is that? Songs about songs?
They was talking about the music and all this. It was a song. It was the lyrics were about a song. It was it was music, and then the best part of it was the Conjurer of Thunder. I mean, that is such a great rock and roll line, and they nailed it. It's a Led Zeppelin kind of thing,
I agree. I want to first shout out Noogie. Thanks for joining, man. We appreciate the membership. When he was doing what is it? When he was that line about congregating
conjugal visits.
No, the thunder, man. I don't conjuring. When he was doing that line, it was like it reminds me of all like the early days, right? Like when they're still doing like bars and like on campuses and they're just fucking around. You hear those recordings, and like it's like the kind of like silly, carefree PHiSH that you listen to, but you don't really get to see anymore. And like he's literally on stage in front of thousands and thousands of people acting like an idiot and not giving a shit. And I was all about it.
Right, exactly.
Conjurers.
Jacob. The Mission Ballroom. I'm not sure which night it was, but my thing with the Mission Ballroom, you listen to that, it sounds like demos. I think it betrayed a lot of the songs. I think you listen to that on Pillow Jets from there, you're like, I don't know.
It's okay. It had
It's
potential,
okay.
but it wasn't there all the way.
Right. I mean, but it was so good. They got real psychedelic. They got out there. There was a nice slowed down section that they did, and then they let it go into
David Bowie.
Oddly for me placed Bowie.
Very odd, but very well executed, I think. And I don't know if it was just strictly at a comparative, like a 1-to-1, or if it was like all time better, not all time, obviously 1.0 Bowies, but like I thought this was a noticeable improvement over the last Bowie. Like I think they've kind of were off on the last one, came
It had
home
an
and were like, we
extra
got to
section.
practice.
Right. It had an extra section in it where they did a little jam in the middle that felt very natural. It wasn't like, okay, we got to put something in the middle of this. It felt like they just ended up there and very quietly found their way back as a unit. It seemed very cohesive tonight, except maybe what you were saying at the beginning of Birds of a Feather, when you felt they were off a half a second. Somebody was
Well,
off.
and I mean, that's a very like hypercritical, shitty thing for me to point out. But when you
That's what we're
perform
here
at their
for.
level, right, and when you perform at the level they have for that long, I mean,
we'd have nothing to talk about if they weren't off for a half a second sometimes. All right, so that was the first half of the set, and I would give that an A+ all day of the week.
The first half.
Yeah,
definitely. I agree. And then going into cities, I got the first half, to say the first like 3 or 4 minutes, my excitement was through the roof. I thought it was going to be, I would have liked Bowie to just go for another 10
7 minutes, or instead of the Fuego,
right.
another 8 minutes.
But man, so here's the foreshadowing I've been doing all night. Cities was doing great. I was finally getting into the jam. Paige starts teasing Fuego, right? And so you have those melodies going in. It's super organic. And I was like making notes like, this is awesome. They're going to do this Fuego infused city jam, right? That's where my head was. And if they had stayed in that path, in that lane, doing the Fuego infused cities jam, or even like a back and forth, phenomenal choice. It would have been, could have been. But instead, they're like, all right, we're ripcording out of this. And not ripcord. I mean, it was a nice transition, but they just got out of cities way too early.
Right.
Way too early.
Herbert, let me try to do this off the top of my head. Sigma and on Pillow Jets and Ruby Waves are 4.0 songs. Final Hurrah and Fuego are 3.0 songs. And the Bowie Cities are 1.0 songs. So no 2.0 songs in the set proper, and the encore was all 1.0.
There was a 2.0 song. 46 Days was a 2.0 song.
Yeah, but he was asking about the second set.
No, I think he was just asking for the years in general.
So did you do the vintage on this? I know you did it once or twice. Is that
the show vintage for the entire show was 2001, which is right in line with where the earlier shows were.
Oh, because like the bounce, right? You had the
and then you have like David Bowie and Cities. That's like an 86 and an 84, and the character Zero. Well, no, that was 96. But then Slave. There were a couple that were really bringing it back. Right? Yeah, I agree, Jason. Hold on. Okay. I got to correct this because you didn't answer Herbert's question. You misread it. Oh, no. David got it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 83 to 2000, 03 to 04. And then I think 4.0 is the one that throw people off, and it's not widely accepted. But most people now understand when we say it's post-pandemic.
Right. Trey said it. Trey said it. Yeah, in that Instagram.
I said it way before.
I know, but he said this is my 4.0 guitar when he got the new guitar.
Well, then everybody can shut the fuck up. It is doctrine now. It is accepted.
It is. All right, so let's talk No Vikings.
That is a thing.
Do you think that's a conscious choice, or do you think it's I forgot to do it one time and I forgot to do it again and it just gets forgotten?
I mean, they're playing the music where it normally overlays, but I think it's an indecisiveness about whether or not where they're going with it. I think they fucked it up a couple times, and now it's just like leaving it off. I mean, you know what I mean? Like a trigger shyness.
They need to go into rehearsal, maybe pull it out at sound check, run through it a couple times or something.
I like it though. The Viking Warriors. You know, like when
I do. I want my Viking Warriors.
I think it should be there. That said, this was a nice version with or without Viking Warriors.
Single weirdest lyric, one of the single weirdest lyrics they've ever written. And when you look at it as a whole, it's like a poem some 14-year-old wrote the first time they ate acid or something. You know? And they're looking around the room, they're like, world's greatest dad stickers on the wall. All right.
No, that was strictly a we gotta sell merch type of thing, right? How many mugs did they sell that had World's Greatest? I got one. My wife and daughter got me one.
Oh
So
boy.
I am actually officially the world's greatest dad. I hate to tell you all. The
Oh,
mug
man,
tells
I'm
me that.
sure I got a mug somewhere. Anyway, let's
I
go on. Then Ruby Waves, I was done pretty much at this
Yeah.
point.
This was the opposite. I was gonna say Fuego and Bowie both benefited. Those were the other two with Maze that benefited from the repeats. This was the opposite. I think it had none of the specialness that the last one, the Huntsville Ruby Waves, had. I mean, it was well played, but they kept it safe. It was kind of a forced jam, and it really just ended the set on a
How
weaker note.
do you feel about that as a set closer? I feel like they've done that once before, but don't quote me on that.
I mean, I don't get too hung up on the position of these things, but I
You
think
don't think you don't think a set should end with a rock song like "Bro, lights screaming, everybody guitar," you know?
yeah, but if they did that every single time, it would be super predictable. And I don't know. I like because last 21 actually, I think they started doing the upside down shows where they were starting with the rockers and then closing out with jams and stuff. And I like that. Yeah, it is a little weird. The problem with it is I don't have like a fundamental problem with it. Like it can be there. I think what happens though is they're up against the clock and they don't get as spacey and out there with it. I think the 2 spot on the second set is the
a
jam
sweet
vehicle spot. Yeah,
Right.
that is the sweet spot. If you want something to really get out there, that's where you place it. I think that it was an okay version, but probably the leading cause of why it didn't get where it should have gotten is because of the placement. It was too safe.
Right. Is Tweezer going to end up being one more Saturday night this tour?
What, like
We'll get
the
one
Saturday of
tomorrow
every?
night. Will Tweezer show up tomorrow night and then one show up wherever in Madison Square Garden on the first Saturday?
I can see them saving Tweezer for Philly. For the man.
Really?
Yeah.
Because last year, a nod to last year and the Weavy one they did in and out.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if they explicitly or, if it's just like a subconscious thing, but I feel like, or maybe I'm just projecting, but I feel like they give a little extra when they're in their like hometown shows, and I think Philly is is a hometown show for Trey. Yeah,
right. David, I tell you what, they nailed that traffic so perfect to like it was 11:000:059 whatever. I mean, they just hung it there. They're professionals.
Holy shit. I agree.
So I would have done it the other way. I would have done Slave and then Character Zero because you know me, I want the big rock and roll song.
Yeah, but Slave's a fun climax to a show, I think.
I guess.
I liked this character too. It had this like neat shuffle funk feel to it, like which it always kind of has, but I feel like they really leaned into it. Like PHiSH opened up the beat a little bit just to give it a little more of a shuffle to it, and they weren't like just rushing through it, which
you know
was
where
nice.
I would love to see a Slave end up at the end of the first set. I think that would be a great first set closer.
Okay.
But maybe it just seems cheesy on some level that it's the encore because everyone's getting in their car and leaving. It's too obvious, like you were saying earlier. It's obvious, but it's not too obvious. This is a little too obvious, maybe.
Well, yeah, maybe. I thought it was more so about with Star Lake and the traffic issues they've been having. That's where I thought the obviousness came from for this one because
right.
Dead and Co. and with PHiSH today, they had lines coming into the venue for miles and miles. I mean,
that's all.
Out of control.
I have no idea, Jacob, how many of these songs were going to be played in NC. I assume the Sigma probably would have shown up there. The Ruby Waves, because that venue was right on the water.
Yeah. Well, the repeats tonight, I guess I'll close out with that, was 46 Days, Bouncing, Stash, Maze, Sense, Sigma, Oasis, Bowie, Fuego, Ruby Waves, and Character Zero. They are essentially becoming Dead and Co. with all these goddamn repeats.
We're going to track how these songs do.
Right, but I don't think we're going to add them on the set list because that'll be really confusing.
All right, guys. Remember, you got to like, you got to subscribe, you got to ring that bell. You can be like Nuji.
Yeah, become a member. And come back tomorrow night. We'll do it all over again. All right, see you next
You
time.
can listen to Guns N' Roses.